we are online. I am extremely happy to have Mary Kay Greer with me today here. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Mary is the first person from the States I'm talking to here on this talk, on this live talk. And I really wanted to have her here first because she's one of my greatest tarot experts I know. I have read a lot of stuff from her, and especially when I was still studying myself as a beginner. In the back, you can see one of my favorite books, Tarot Constellations, I think it's called in English, by Mary. But I also love your Women of the Golden Dawn. I think this was a really, really fantastic book. And I really liked also your book on court cards. So I haven't read your book on reversals, but I have read some bits of it, and I was really taken by it because it made me think about reversal cards. And I thought in these times where everything is topsy-turvy, do you say, I think?
Topsy-turvy.
Topsy-turvy. It's a brilliant thing to talk about reversals because it is one of the subjects in the tarot scene which people quarrel about, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So just what everybody can expect right now, I'm going to do the chat. I'm just seeing that people are already watching. I'm going to share in a few moments also with the group so people might join further. Mary's going to say what she has to say about reversals. Then we can do questions. So if you have questions, just put them in the comments. I will read them out to Mary and we can discuss them. And Mary has kindly agreed to do a little exercise in the end. And for this, you all need to have your tarot cards next to your side. So you can all do this. If you don't want to do the exercise, you can, of course, leave the session beforehand, but I think it's a real treat to have an exercise done by Mary. And now I let you do the work and I do the chatting.
Thank you very much for inviting me to do this. Reversals is one of my favorite things to talk about, if not always the favorite thing to work with, because they can be difficult at times. But that's part of the characteristic, something that is reversed and not necessarily as accessible as the upright cards. So there's a very basic meaning right there. I got into tarot in 1967 with Eden Gray's book, The Tarot Revealed. So that had very short reversed meanings, and I assumed that that's how you read the cards. But I'm terrible at memorizing. And so for me, the access point with tarot was really when I began just telling stories based on the cards. And that was difficult with reversals because how do you tell the story when there's a reverse card using simply the image? And we'll look at a few cards in a moment that give us that opportunity. But using the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, I was able to tell the stories. And I do want to mention at this point that the Hangman in some ways represents reverse cards. It itself is on its head. And as we can think about now, where everybody is sort of in this suspended animation state in our lives, that's very much of a reversed kind of situation that under ordinary circumstances, we prefer not to consider or think about or even acknowledge in ourselves. You know, when we're in this kind of hung up state and seeing things from a very unusual point of view, some people glory in it, but a lot of us would prefer to ignore it. So with reversals, I went through a period, several years, where I decided I wasn't going to read reversals, that I really wanted to understand the cards fully in their upright state, but that range that's possible. So I challenged myself to see the cards in the fullest range I possibly could. And that meant that every card has its problematic side as well as its beneficial side. Some of them emphasize one more than the other, but the Sun card, for instance, can be burnout. It can be being too egotistical. And so I really tried to see this range of meanings, an entire range for each card. The 10 of Swords can be relaxing, going into the dead man's pose in yoga. And if you've ever done that at the end of a yoga session, the sense of relief and just letting go is incredible. So for each card, I kind of differentiated that. But working with Carl Jung's psychology, one of his ideas is that there's a significance to everything that happens in any moment in time, a meaning that we can find if we look for it. And so I thought, well, if cards come up spontaneously reversed, then there has to be a significance or a meaning for that. So I started integrating then the reverse cards back into the concept of the deck. So first off, I really want to say that you don't have to read reversals. You can just throw it out. As a matter of fact, with the Thoth deck, I don't use reversals, the Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck. And so, you know, if it's reversed, well, here you could have the moon over the sun, sun over moon. It's not that you can't make up a meaning for them, but it wasn't really designed with reversals in mind. It was designed with elemental dignities, which is its own talk. When I get a brand new deck, I usually read it first completely upright. I want to get a sense of the flow of the cards. But for the most part, especially with decks that have storytelling images on all the cards, I do like to use reversals. It adds a dimension and it points to an aspect of that full range that I might not have paid attention to. So as far as I see it, reversals can mean anything that you want them to mean. And that's really the key. If you're having trouble with reversals, but you feel like you should be using them, if you have trouble memorizing them like me, I just can't, I have to find some other way to do it, then one of the things you can do is you can make an inner commitment to reading reverse cards in a particular way. And in my book, I go through 12 ways to read a reversal. So for when I started back using reversals, because I was working with a Jungian perspective, I focused on kind of a psychological approaches to the reverse cards. So for a long time, reversals were inner rather than outer. They also tended to show where somebody was resisting or blocking something rather than expressing it or for it to be overt, public, seen. So it was kind of a lesser seen. You have to dig a little deeper in order to see it with a reversal. And it was automatic. It was easily accessible, available to you if it was upright.
Okay, so you have to duck in more like the Hanged Man if it's turned around. Okay.
Exactly. Yes. And it was really important for a long period for me to see where there was blocked energy. People might see it as the shadow, but the shadow has a lot of negative connotations. And so just seeing where there was a resistance. Along with that, I found that there were time delays with some of them, especially the aces, and also the Wheel of Fortune. The Wheel of Fortune could often be like a squeaky wheel. I've got some of the cards here, but I can't always find them. Oh yeah, there's the Wheel of Fortune. So things are changing with the Wheel of Fortune. And when it's reversed, it's kind of like a squeaky wheel or being stuck in a rut, meaning it's hard to get moving. It's hard to get that change happening. So you want to get out into the world, and things just keep coming up that keep you from doing that, just like we're going through now.
Yeah.
So I found that these different ideas sort of melded together, that they were all about how we have, as you said, we have to dig deeper. We have to go in deeper to look at that and see whether it's appropriate or not to make that energy more accessible, more seen, more known.
So
Sometimes it's not.
yeah, sorry. Most people say that they take it as a blocked energy. Would you say this is the same as digging deeper?
Well, blocked is one of the key words that I definitely use. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's often where we're blocking ourselves from having access to that energy.
Mm.
Sometimes it's outer circumstances, sometimes it's more inner. And a lot depends on your own style of reading, your own focus. If you're reading very therapeutically, very psychologically, then those inner blocks are really important to become more aware of. And tarot gives us an opportunity to get to that awareness and to decide what we want to do. But it's not always negative. It's not always a problem. It can be that there's a breakthrough. We're breaking through old energy. The 10 of Wands, which I don't have here, which shows somebody carrying all those wands. When it's reversed, there's a chance to release them, let them go. The 3 of Swords, I do have that here somewhere. When that comes up, it's you really get the image. Oops, I thought I had these all organized. Of yeah, here it is. So with the reversal, you can see the handles become very heavy and they fall away.
Yeah,
so it can be
interesting.
the
Yeah.
end of a particular situation, but we can also be kind of, if you're working psychologically, denying the pain. Here, you're feeling it. Here you're going, oh, everything's okay. It doesn't really hurt. So your style of reading, the other cards, the question itself, the situation are all going to lend itself to what that possibility is. And I would often consider several of them. In other words, you might be blocking it, saying, oh, it's not, you know, I don't feel any pain, but that's a way to kind of relieve the pain. So I found that many of the meanings, even though they seemed opposite interpretations and opposite meanings, were actually talking about the same thing from a different level, different dimension.
So you wouldn't look at the words so much or think about the words. You have remembered your keywords for each card, but you look at the picture and get a feeling what it does when you look at it the reversed way, like with the swords?
For me, because I use the Rider-Waite-Smith deck as my major deck, definitely, because it works very well that way.
Yeah.
With some decks, that's not really possible. I've got another one here, the Wild Unknown Tarot. You know, it's not going to be as possible to, you know, look at the picture and come up with a reverse meaning.
Interesting.
You know? And so you either have to have your memorized ones or something simple, like it's, you know, inner, blocked, those kind of keyword dimensions to add to it rather than the picture itself. So it depends on the deck you're using. And there's quite a few decks that I don't use reversals with.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem appropriate with the deck. I feel like it's more responding in the moment to what I'm seeing. But you get something like this, the 5 of Pentacles, and what was the window that they're ignoring becomes a doorway.
Oh, this
and
is
the
brilliant.
darkness that was weighing on them, pushing down, is suddenly much lighter.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So in this particular deck, there's certain cards that seem to tell a different story when they're reversed. We have that doorway again with the 4 of Swords, where the window now becomes an opening that you
really
can
like this.
move through and move out of that stressful situation.
Wow.
Into the light.
So in a way,
dream or vision, and here it becomes an actual access.
So in a way, it could actually be energizing to turn the card around while you do a reading. If people don't understand the card or say, I don't know what to do with it, just turn it around and you see a pathway.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the whole thing of understanding cards as a whole range.
Yeah.
So the reversals, working with reversals for a while, if you have a particular deck that you use all the time, spending time looking at both angles can increase the range of meanings no matter how you choose to read them.
Wow.
And that's what I'm all about. I mean, having done tarot for over 50 years, I don't try to do it all at once. So I went through a period of no reversals. Then I started integrating a few keywords that related to my strongest interest. And then I went back and looked at some of the old traditions of reversals. And rather than memorize them, certain ones spoke to me, and I started integrating some of those meanings. For instance, the Six of Cups that has, it's usually seen as the past, has an old meaning in it's two children in a garden, in cups. Well, in the Atella's old meanings, when it's reversed, it's the future. So you've got past and future. And you've got certain cards that I don't remember exactly which ones they are because I don't use those anymore, but if it's reversed, it becomes a grandparent. So if those kinds of things are of interest to you, you can integrate not all of the reverse meanings, but the ones that strike you as necessary, important, helpful.
I was going to ask you a question about the history of the reversed cards. I know you are very well versed with the tarot history as well. I have here the only German tarot deck by Frank Glan, he's called. He was also an astrologer. And as you can see, we have one meaning written in the upright version, but also in the down version, in the reversed version, and also on the sides, actually. And they are always totally different. And I know that Italia, for example, did the same with his cards.
Yes.
And I was wondering whether in the beginning people always thought about reversed cards and then kind of the reversed meaning, actually, as you did your example with past becomes future. And whether you know why this disappeared.
Yeah, Attila was one of the first people to actually write a book about meanings of the cards and come up with a deck for it. So his interpretation sort of became standard for tarot. And because he used reverse meanings and in some cases, I think sideways meanings, because he also did oracle decks, divination decks that weren't tarot, those were incorporated in as people started developing tarot interpretations. They tended to incorporate his ideas, especially with the minor arcana, because most people looked at it and said, I don't know what these cards mean. So if you have somebody who said, oh, it means this, then it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll start there and then see if I want to add something to that. So he became the base, even for the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. MacGregor Mathers wrote a book on the tarot in 1888 when the Golden Dawn was first formed. And he basically used translations from Attila. So, yeah.
And you think the weight deck was done in the thought of working with reversed cards? Does weight have reversed meanings? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure about this right now. Okay, interesting.
And he drew many of the meanings from Attila as well as other sources.
Okay, so if you really want to do our research, we go back to Italia. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a good place to at least understand where the basis is. You also find those meanings in Papus, the French tarotist, and someone named Doucet. I could be pronouncing it wrong.
Sorry, can you say it again? There was a slip in the audio. Which name?
Both Papus and then Doucet was another French writer who took Attila and broadened the meanings. So many of the meanings that he used were incorporated into standard meanings. But for those, you basically have to memorize. And like I said, for me, memorization doesn't really work. So I like the associative level of the cards. And I like the Rider-Waite-Smith deck so much because I can make those stories up about what's going on in the cards. You also have to look at what else is going on, because, for instance, if you have a Ace of Cups reversed, that could be saying, if you want to use one of the key words, no love, not love. So love lost, unhappy, dissatisfied with love. But it would depend on what's around it, because it can also be a delay. It can be going deeper into the emotions, looking at your own inner emotions that aren't seen by other people. So there's a lot of range. So what happens is, if you put that next to another card, then you begin to see, oh, here there's the spilt cups in the Five of Cups. And that's just augmented by that ace, as especially drawing the attention to something very important that perhaps got lost in the process. So it just intensifies this Five of Cups meaning. And this tells you a little bit more about what that is.
And then you have the river in the back of the Five of Cups, where this might have flown into.
Yeah. See, if they were there, now you have a different story, that one of those cups that's remaining upright now could lead to something very wonderful.
Wow.
By following that river, crossing the bridge,
yeah,
doing whatever. So it's, I think everybody can see how strong the difference is between having these two cards next to each other versus having the upright ace next to
totally.
Yeah. So the other cards in the spread really help elucidate it. One thing that I think happens for people is that if you're using reverse cards, and by the way, if you've got your deck with you and you want to do the exercise later, be shuffling cards and making sure that you get reversals in there. Turn half of them upside down as you're shuffling.
That was another question people are asking. Sorry to interrupt. They wanted to know, when you calculate, when you do reversals. So I, for example, would look that all cards are upright, and if a card turns around, this would mean something to me. Many people do it like this, but you say no, just make them all in different directions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to read reversals, when you shuffle the cards, you make sure that they're all in different directions. And what happens is, if you've thoroughly mixed your deck, it's not unusual for there to be 4 to 6 reverse cards. Yeah. So that means that it can be easily half or more than half, very normal, that are reversed. And that's, I think, a little bit distressing for people, because when you're reading for a client, they look at those reverse cards and they think, uh-oh, something's wrong. It's not good. Yeah. You can counter that by going, oh, how wonderful, look, you have the reverse, but you can't do that too many times. So you have to be careful with that. One way to become more comfortable with reverse cards is do a reading, let's say a Celtic Cross or any 10-card reading, in which you have 6 reversals for upright. Take the upright cards and turn them face down so that you don't see the face. You turn it so that it looks like this. So all you have are the reverse cards. Turn those reverse cards upright and look for where in that storyline, how is that not being fully expressed outwardly? Are you resisting it? Are you blocking it? Is it inner that other people don't see it? Is it something that you're breaking through, that you're trying to overturn? Are you, struggling with it in some way? Is it an area of stress that you need to really face and look at more deeply? So read those, just those cards. Now read them upright, but realize that it's kind of an area that's not as accessible, perhaps a little more stressful, or takes more effort. If you want what you see there, you're going to have to put more effort into it. You're going to have to put more awareness, more consciousness into it. So it's not as automatic as those upright cards.
This sounds a lot like retrograde planets to me.
Yes.
So
And you can think about that, retrograde, but also all in English, the words that begin with RE, to reconsider, to review, to retry something. All of those cards that talk about that, renew,
repeat,
all of those words are words that can be associated with the reversed cards, reversed.
This is so interesting. I really like reversals.
So you can think of all those reverse cards. Once you've looked at the cards that are reversed, turn those upside down. So you've got the reverse cards, turn those or turn it over so that you can't see them, and turn the cards that were upright all facing up. So now you have 4 cards left that were upright originally. And now just look at those 4, because those are easily accessible, automatic. You don't even have to think about it. They're out there. Other people can see them. They may not be the best cards in the spread. They may be difficult cards, or they may be very easy cards, but that's what, other people are seeing. That's what just happens automatically if you don't think about it. They also can be things that you can use to access those, the reverse cards, because those represent opportunities that are easily accessible. How can you use those to integrate and bring in more of the reversed energies? So now put the spread back the way it was originally, and you're seeing it on 2 dimensions, 2 levels. You see your easily access points, and you see your more difficult access points, or the more hidden aspects. And so you get this double view. All you have to do is do that, a deep reading like that a couple of times in your life, maybe once a year, do that. And you start seeing that dual level in every reading, and realizing that you're working with these different dimensions. So that's another possibility. That's getting a little deep. It's going a little more advanced, but I think it's worth mentioning.
Please do. I like advanced stuff. I'm just reading some questions here.
Yes.
Melanie is asking, well, you answered this question already in the beginning, Melanie, whether we could compare the reversed cards to the Hanged Man. Yes, we can, obviously. Yeah. And Christopher is asking, it's German. So he asks, when I'm doing a reading for somebody else, the reversed cards for the client would be, again, not reversed. He's confused about this. You understand? So when the client is sitting in front of me, he would say, why now they are straight and they should be reversed. But I think this is not a problem, because you just do it in your head, what's reversed, right?
Right. Well, that's why I sit next to my client, so that we look at the spread from the same point of view. But if you're reading the spread for the client, your choice is to either leave the spread facing the client if they're opposite you, and you read everything upside down, or you take the deck and deal the cards out so that they're facing you, the reader, and the client is just listening to what you say. They're not interacting. I do interactive, so I have the client sit next to me and we look at the spread and all the cards from the same perspective. Because I have like 12 meanings, I'm not going to go through all of them for reverse cards. I now don't have a fixed set of meanings for the reversal. What I do is that I interact with the client. And so I will take a reverse card and turn it upright and ask the client to simply describe the card to me, and I take them through a couple of steps of going a little deeper into what they see in the picture. It's one reason why I like to use the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but there's several other decks that I use this way. What happens is, as they're describing the card that was reversed when it first was laid out, as they describe it, I listen for the reversal. Somewhere in their description, somewhere in their response to the card is why the card was reversed. A very simple one is that the emperor comes up reversed. And the person, I turn it upright and I say, tell me about the emperor. And they start describing how he's so judgmental, how, he's very aloof and distant, and you can't talk to him directly. And I'm going, oh, those are all reverse meanings. Of course it was reversed. It's a problem with authority figures, father figures, somebody who sets himself up as an authority. So
I constantly reversed emperor myself.
This often does come up. As a matter of fact, when this comes up in there's a position in the Celtic cross that's often seen as the unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
I usually in a reading, I go, there's issues, father issues, boss issues that we may not get into fully here. If you're doing therapy, then that would be a very good area to look at in your situation. I don't always say that, but that's what's going on. And while we're on the emperor, I do want to mention that court cards have kind of an important factor to me with reversals. There can be the obvious one, like here we have the King of Cups with his cups. Reversed, it doesn't mean this all the time, but there have been several significant times when somebody is going on the wagon, they stop drinking. And so, or they
right out.
And so we see that resistance to drugs, resistance to drinking. Mm-hmm. And so that's one possibility. The other possibility with the reverse court cards so that's a very literal one from the idea of saying no to that drinking. But the other possibility is that the person is not using, or there's somebody in their environment who is not using the characteristics of the King of Cups in an easy or beneficial way. So it's someone who is having problems expressing their emotions or feeling secure in this kind of uneven situation. The King of Cups can usually ride the emotions. And but here, it's somebody or a particular time in your life where that's very confusing to you or very stressful to have to deal with those emotions. So I find that reverse court cards are not necessarily bad people. They are people who there's not an opportunity in the situation for them to shine their best, and therefore they tend to go into their worst characteristics. If you think about some sports figures who, when they win, everything's glorious, but there's a few sports figures that when they lose, end up, throwing down the tennis racket and stomping off the court. That's not who they normally are. And so that reverse, it's like, how is this person in a situation where they are not presenting their best side? Mm-hmm. Because I don't believe that there are, for 99.9% of the time, I don't believe that there are evil people in the world.
That's a very good attitude.
Yeah. But there's people who don't shine in particular situations or context. Mm-hmm. A farmer who has to work in a building that has artificial light and no windows. What happens to that kind of person? That's what I try to remember when I see that. And what happens to me when I'm in a situation where my qualities are not appreciated. They're not seen by other people, and therefore I tend to act not at my best. So I try to keep a sense of compassion for the court cards when they're reversed.
I really like your approach, Mary. Very, very deep stuff. Thank you.
Well, it gives us access to people that we might have been pushing away when we start seeing, how is it that they don't really they're not in a situation where their best qualities come forth. and that maybe there's something in the spread that shows us how we can approach that person, or just leave them alone. Or also in ourselves, because I also see the court cards as being 16 different aspects of ourselves. So I always read it as an aspect of self that we may be projecting onto other people. So see, these all kind of fit together in that psychological dimension. Where's the stress point? And reversals do tend to show stress in that they're not necessarily bad, but there's a level of stress there because whenever you lay out the cards and you see reverse cards, don't you immediately feel a second of stress? What do I do? Oh, how do I handle this? What do I say about this? So there's that moment of stress that's there.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily bad because we also grow through stress. When you exercise and push against something, stretch yourself further than you would normally go, that can be a real growth opportunity. So there is a hidden opportunity in that reversal.
This is one of the questions Monica had. She says she's very reluctant to do reversals, and when by accident a card turns around in a reading, she immediately turns it upright. And she was wondering whether this was something to do with her, whether it was wishful thinking or something like that. What would you say to that?
It could be habit. It could be wishful thinking. It could be avoiding that issue or problem. Carl Jung says that everything that happens simultaneously at the same time has a meaningful connection. And therefore that reverse card had, and especially accidentally, has a meaningful connection to what was happening in that moment. Why not look at that? If you're doing just straight predictive readings and, trying to just look at what's going on in the situation, it may not be as important. If you're looking at the more psychological, therapeutic dimension, it becomes very important.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So how's our time? Is it time for an exercise?
Yeah, just let me just check whether there's an important question which you haven't answered yet.
Sure.
So backsides obviously are an issue, but you would probably prefer decks where the backside is so that you can't see whether it's reversed or not reversed, the card, right?
Right, or train yourself to not pay any attention to it, when you're dealing them out.
Okay. I was wondering whether when you have a reversed card and you want to energize yourself, would it be a good idea to turn it upright in a reading with, like you would work with a chakra which is blocked somehow?
Yeah.
Is this something you do?
Definitely. And that's why I have my clients look at reverse cards first in their upright position, because we want to get a sense of what the card is about. And I'm listening for, watching for how is that reversed? How is that blocked? How is that somehow, a stress point? Also, there could be hidden wisdom. Where is there a little bit of hidden wisdom that we need to bring out, that we need to dig deeper in order to bring that forward? There's also a shamanic dimension if you're really into shamanism, because that other realm, other world that's being shown through reversals and that we don't necessarily see in the upright. There was a card I was going to mention on that, the 10 of Pentacles, where there's, it's like you're entering into another realm or another world.
Yes, the Hermit. Yeah, okay.
The gateway. Yeah.
Oh, that's so lovely. And people can read all this in your tarot reversals book, right? You give
yes, definitely.
You have your 12 methods mentioned there. So I definitely need to get this book. I will get it right after this session, and I advise everybody else to do this as well, because it sounds fantastic. And I will do my best to translate it to German.
Yeah. Well, the meanings that I have for reversals in that book are meant to be just examples of possibilities. And so I go through some contradictory meanings, because as you read through, if you're doing your own reading, is if you read through the reverse meanings, there's one or two that will kind of strike true.
Yeah.
And, kind of hit you. Or you say to yourself, it's not any one of these, but now I get the idea and I see something different in it. And that's really, to me, the most successful. There's certain meanings that have come up only once or twice in a reading in all the years, in all the 50 years, that a reverse card meant something one time and never again meant that same thing. So that's where intuition comes in the moment, the other cards that are there, the situation, what the client says, and listening for what the client says that rings true, especially with reversals.
Wow. Yeah, brilliant, Mary. Really, I'm really happy I asked you to do this talk. So I think the questions which have been asked, they are kind of repeating now themselves. And later on, if anybody wants to watch this video later, they can still do commenting, and I probably can answer their comments by what you've said. And I think we're all ready for the exercise.
Hey. So I was thinking of two things for the exercise, two kinds of questions or perspectives that would be important now. And you can read, we're going to draw a single reverse card, and then the cards on either side of it we're going to look at. And I'll tell you how to do that in a moment. But the question that I want you to be asking is, what is the difficult aspect for you of being isolated right now? Where is there something that you're not seeing about that? You're resisting, you're blocking, you're not comfortable with. The other possibility that you could ask is about any anxiety or concern that you have about what's on the other side. After we go back to work, or after we try to do normalcy, it can't be the same normalcy that we had before. It's going to have to be a different kind, but we don't know what that is. It's a complete unknown. So it could relate to what your anxiety is as you look and go, what is it going to be like in 6 months? Will the world be different? And so either one of those, I'd like you to kind of take a moment to just get in touch with that. And we're going to find where that is something that you most need to look at around that, whichever point you want to look at, either your current situation or your concerns about what's on the other side for us. And you should have your deck shuffled with everything kind of mixed so that there's all reversed, or there's reversed and upright. And what you do is you go through the deck and turn the cards over one by one, turning them over. This is just a full deck that I happen to have here. It's not the one I would use. And until you come to the first reversal.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody decide what your focus is. Take your shuffled deck, or you may want to shuffle it one more time, and then turn cards over from the top until you get to the first reversal. And take just a moment to consider what that is. What is that first reversal? Then you're going to take the next card. What would be the next card that was, in the deck if you kept turning it over? And that may be reversed or it may be upright. That's going to show where that energy is going, because nothing is static. It doesn't stay the same. Also, look at the card just before the reversal, before that first reversal. That will be an upright card, with one exception, but that would be an upright card, and that's where it came from. So that reversed energy came from somewhere, the card that was just before it, and it's going somewhere, the card that just follows it. The last two cards could be reversed. The one exception is if the first card you turned upright or turned over was a reverse card. So it could be that you've got the deck and the very first card was reversed, so you don't have a card before it. In that case, take the card from the bottom of the deck and turn that over. Because if the cards were in a circle instead of in a stack, that would have been the card just before. If they were all in a circle,
yeah,
that card was the card before.
Yeah,
It was continuous.
Like with the Fool.
Yeah. So you'll have 3 cards. The center is your focus, and the card before shows from whence it came. That's an old expression, from where it came. And the card that comes after is showing where it's going. So it's not static. So does anybody want to say what their reverse card was?
I'm just seeing. Möchte jemand kommentieren, ob welche Karte er als oder sie als reversed Karte gezogen hat? Gibt es da jemanden? I think we need to give them a few seconds.
Sure.
Because it's also in a delay. We're live, but it's a few seconds later.
And did you draw a card?
I did draw a card, yeah. I got.
What was your reverse card?
My reversed card was the Page of Swords. I took the clan thingy.
Ah.
So
tell us a little bit about the Page of Swords.
My Page of Swords, yeah. Well, it's about communication for me. It's about brainstormings, walking through fresh air and stuff like this. And yeah, that's where I feel very much inhibited, especially I told you we're having now to wear masks in Germany from today onwards. And for me, this is really restricting my sense of liberty. I have also a big issue with it because of my feminist studies and whatever. I really don't want to wear a mask. I fought in the 80s so hard against stuff like this, and now and for me the page is often this rebelling young girl, you know. It reminds me of my past, come to think of it. So this is what I think about. But here now people have wrote loads of stuff actually. Rosemary says the 9 of Cups. Do you want to tell something, just a brief word for everybody who has written down some things so they can think about this?
It depends on the deck, of course, that she was using, but I'm
sure she uses Rider-Waite.
Yeah. Okay, so the 9 of Cups has a person sitting in front of a table with lots and lots of cups on it. And the table has a big tablecloth over it. So if you reverse that, there's a sense of what happens if the tablecloth falls away and we start seeing something that was hidden originally underneath that table. Another way to look at that person in the 9 of Cups is that he could be an MC in a play or in a theater, and that's the curtain. So there's something that, even though everything looks very wonderful, and usually it's a very good card, you know, a sense of having it all, but with Cups, which is very social, he's all alone. So there's something that has been, in English, we say swept under the rug, you know, hidden behind closed curtains. There's some sense that there's something missing in that, even though he is very self-satisfied. So it's like, what happens when we become we have everything we ever wished for? And it's called the wish card. But there can be that isolation. And so it's an opportunity to look at where issues of isolation have been hidden in the past. Now, because you are isolated more, they come to the foreground. They're starting to be revealed. Where you thought you had everything, you're discovering things that you ignored, that you didn't want to acknowledge or see.
Mm.
So there's something in that, I would say.
Yeah, I'm sure Rosemary can do with this. She says she uses the Modern Witch Tarot, but it's very much weight grounded. Another person, Marion, writes Queen of Wands.
Queen of Wands reversed. That one, again, with the core cards, it gets to be very, very personal. So I would love it if she could say something about what's the strongest meaning that for her, the Queen of Wands.
Yeah.
Can she respond with that?
So Marion, if you want to get a keyword or something from Mary, you have to reveal something, what it means to you.
Yeah, upright. Upright. Let the Queen of Wands be upright for you.
And Melanie says she drew the Hanged Man.
The Hangman reversed. What happens when the Hangman is now upright? Oh, a couple of the meanings that I didn't mention are when there's excess or overdone or underdone. So when the Hangman is reversed, he's really going very deeply under and going very deep. When it's upright, there's one possibility, one extreme, and these extremes, is that he says, oh, there's nothing to see underneath. Again, similar to that Nine of Cups, but here it's he's got his hands behind his back, but we don't pay attention to that when he's upright so much. It looks like he's dancing. It looks like everything is fine, but there's some hidden motivation in that upright. I mean, when the when the Hangman is upright,
he's upright.
Yeah, it looks like everything's fine, but there's usually some motivation, something that the person is deliberately hiding. In this case, and that's kind of a special thing with the Hangman. The other side of it is, again, staying on the surface, because the reversal of the Hangman, you go deeply into a situation where you give yourself over completely to whatever knowledge or information is coming through you. An example is, let's say you start painting a painting and it gets dark and you go, oh, I'll just paint a little more. And suddenly the sun is coming up and the painting has emerged into something, and you go, but I don't remember doing that. Those moments where something seems to come through and you don't even know where it is. When it's up, when the Hangman is reversed and therefore looking up, it's like everything is what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And it's you don't go to those deep reflective places. You know, there's nothing to reflect on. There's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to be concerned about. So it's refusing to go into those deep places can be. It can be. So, yeah, but I feel a little bit at a loss, because when I'm talking to an individual doing,
of course you do.
I have them talk about what's going on, and I listen. When somebody's talking about the cards, you hear those moments when they speak true, when there's some emotion that comes up, and that's what I'm listening for, and especially with reverse cards.
I think it still is very helpful for people out there, because they just think about their cards in a different way, and obviously you can't do them all side by side, but just how you reflect about a card is very worthwhile. And Marion just said that for her the Queen of Wands upright means she's one is confident in one's female power.
Okay, so the reversal can be resisting that female power. Not bringing that forth, whether it's because you're afraid of it, or if it's because you feel that socially you cannot do that, or whether you prefer to keep that private to yourself. And that there's something called the bright shadow in Jungian psychology. It's where in a particular instance and situation, you may feel like you don't have the power that you would like to have, that other people, so you would tend to project that onto someone else as having that power rather than owning it for yourself. So the reversal can indicate that.
Yeah. Okay, I think this is good enough. Another person, Ulla, says Knight of Swords. I think this is kind of similar to what I have been saying. In a way, with the Page of Swords, you obviously say we have to. I told you what I think about it upright. We don't know now what Ulla says. It's upright, but I think Ulla, if you listen to what I said about the page, you might have some ideas about this. I'd say.
Also, the Knight of Swords is charging ahead without really thinking through where he's going. He's just, automatically going for something to. It could be because he's angry. There's a challenge, or it could be that he's going to save someone. He's rushing into a situation, so it can be holding back with the reversal from going forward. It can be that you're turning that the potential anger of the Knight of Swords back onto yourself rather than outwardly. So those are just two possibilities.
Yeah, Ulla says yes, so she obviously agrees with your with your assessment.
Yes, and we can't really take the time to talk about the cards on either side, but I think I want to bring out how important it is, because we saw how a meaning can change based on the card that's next to it. I just picked up these two at random, where the person works really hard and then they're going, I just want to walk away from this. I want to let it go. I don't want to do this anymore. Or I will willingly keep going ahead with it. So, or we reverse this one and we see how much pressure doing all of that work can be.
Wow.
Yeah. So looking at the card from where that the energy in your reverse card, where it came from and where it's going, helps you to see it as a piece of a process. It's not static, it's not forever. It's part of a movement, a flow. And so it's important to get a sense of that flow and realize that, yes, it will tell us a little more about the situation. If anybody has 3 cards that really hit them strongly, they know exactly what it's saying. If you want to tell us, please do. You can also unmute them, I believe, if they
wenn einer von euch was über 3 Karten, wie Mary es gerade beschrieben hat, sagen möchte, dann schreibt es schnell noch hier rein. Dann könnten wir das noch als Beispiel nehmen. Again, we have to wait a moment before people will write something down.
Yeah. Can you unmute someone if they want to speak?
I'm sorry?
Can you unmute them, have them speak?
No, I don't think this works with this. They can't speak. They can only write, unfortunately. That would be great, but you would have to have them all in the Zoom conference
they're not all
to do this, because we're now on Facebook with our Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't really do my cards right now because I'm doing this and this and that. I have to do it later. I'm really not able to do this, but I'm really I think I might be taking those reverse cards into stronger consideration from now on, Marion writes. So whatever happened, you really convinced me, and I think all the people who have listened until now to use more of more reversed cards. I really have to dig into this. Ulla writes the Queen of Coins, but I don't know whether she's referring. Oh, she says it's her first upright card, I think, but she doesn't say what she thinks about it.
And was hers the Queen of Wands reversed?
No, she had the Knight of Swords.
Knight of Swords. So it's going from the Queen of which card?
Coins.
Coins, yeah. Queen of Coins to the Knight of Swords reversed. So, I mean, in one story you have a woman and a man. So the man, from whence he came, was from an interaction with the Queen of Coins. That's one very literal possibility. If you're looking just at yourself, it's from the Queen of Coins, where she has control over her material environment and is usually very comfortable, to a situation where, with that reversed Knight of Swords, is very uncomfortable and very anxious about it. There's, a lot of mental stuff. So rather than being very secure, it shows the upset, especially in the mind, of her own personal situation and personal state. So that kind of, I would say that that's probably for a lot of us, going from, if your life situation was very stable, very secure, very, something that you can count on, whether it was good or bad, it was something you could count on with the Queen of Coins. Yeah. And also financially, you know where your next paycheck is coming from. Yeah. And then that Knight of Swords, who's having to scramble to run around.
For me, it's a bit to freak out as well.
Yeah. And, he doesn't know what to do with his energy.
Yeah.
Especially mentally. The ideas, the mental thoughts are all over the place.
Yeah. Rosemary gives her 3 cards now. She says her first card upright was the 7 of Swords. Then she had the 9 of Cups reversed. And the next card is the Ace of Pentacles. And she says for her, it's right on. So it's she can obviously relate to this very well. I would say, Rosemary, I could relate to this reading right now as well.
Yeah. And there's a very hopeful energy with that Ace of Pentacles. Can we all borrow your Ace of Pentacles?
Yes, please give us the Ace of Pentacles.
Yeah. Well, actually, like we're, going through that Garden Gate in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck on the Ace of Pentacles into a new world, but there's a sense of security about it, that we're going to gain something. Yeah. And you might think about, specifically for her, what are the possibilities of what we can gain? I mean, one thing just on a world consciousness, because the pentacle does look like a world, is that we're seeing clean air. We're seeing animals that are coming into environments that they wouldn't normally be in, and realizing how quickly the world itself, Gaia, our planet, can return to a state of health if we stop messing it up.
Yeah, true.
So there is a hopeful sense, especially in terms of that sense of wholeness of Earth, of Gaia.
Rosemary is organizing the first Swedish Tarot Congress, and it was supposed to happen next week, I think. So I can see the 7 of Swords here. And she now delayed it to Halloween. This would be the Ace of Coins, which is a good thing to have for the first tarot convention then in Sweden, I think.
Yeah, and it might be turn out to be something different than she had even thought when she was planning it originally.
Yeah,
that Ace brings something new to it.
Yeah, I would say this as well. Yeah, that's really, really great. I really like this, Mary.
Oh, good.
I think we are well over the time we said we would be doing, and I'm sure you just started into your day today, so you have probably loads to do.
Oh, yeah.
But it is such a pleasure to talk to you, and you're so bright and so full of knowledge. It's it's really, really great to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed this so much.
And as I promised, I try very hard to get you to Germany. You're still on my top list for international talker. Oh God, I lose my English at times. International speakers, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, we will see when we are allowed to travel again, and then we talk about this.
Oh, I look forward to it. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I'm sure everybody is very, very happy that they listen to this, and other people can still listen to this. And I will do my best to give people answers who are still commenting. And I really need to get your book now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. And yeah, we will I'm just saying something in German. Wer immer jetzt noch was kommentieren will, kann das wirklich sehr, sehr gerne tun. Und ich versuche dann, euch da noch Antworten drauf zu geben. Und ansonsten könnt ihr euch das ja weiterhin anschauen. So, I said what I had to say.
So, auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen, everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's just stop. I'm reversed out. Okay. Bye, everybody out there.